Hi, daily trading recap for Wednesday, the 22nd of September, 2021. Coming in with two nice trades on the day, too. We had a 10%er on LPTX and just under a 7%er on Blue Apron, APRN. Not the biggest P&L movers, but and I think I gave myself a little bit of an error. I'm going to highlight that in my trader sync as maybe should have slammed them a little bit more with higher position size on those ones. And especially, too, that I'm now, it's so funny that I'm combining that, too, going through the second Market Wizards by Jack Schwager. Uh, from a lot of people in the section I'm in right now, it's a lot of different people are also saying the same thing of, yeah, you cut your losses quickly and then you hold yourself accountable to different risk levels. But on your winners, on your high conviction ones, those are the ones you absolutely have to slam dunk on those and just push so much harder, which I do not think I have mastered as of yet, too. So I know I'm controlling my risk well and holding myself accountable to those risk tolerances and how I want to look at these trades, too. And, of course, developing the exact trades I take as well, too. But the winners that I feel more conviction in, that I know that have a higher probability of actually happening, I don't feel I've been able to lever up on those as of yet, too. So I think it was a good learning lesson on starting journey here in that area for today. But great trades. I mean, that I can't be disappointed in how I traded them as well, too. Other housekeeping, let's get into it here. My scans is a little bit delayed. I don't know if these market internals are right. Yeah, these market internals are delayed. So no market internal data. I think it was just pretty slow all around the board anyway. SPY, a little bit of a 1% update today as well, too. So maybe it's a little bit of a bottom here, or maybe we're just having kind of a bounce off of that hard pullback, and we'll end up seeing another break at this little 430-ish area here. VIX doing some of the similar types of things. I think in regard to volatility again, yeah, just pulling back hard off of that one day once again, too. So coming into market today, had a lot of tickers on my watch list, but nothing. I pretty much say that every single day, too. I have a lot, or I either have nothing that I was looking at, but again, nothing really I was super hardly convicted of or blinded to. And I think that's a good perspective to have overall, too, that I'm not just so horse blinders on that this is the only stock I'm going to trade, trying to predict that from 10 hours out when, say, opening up my eyes to everything else that's going on and not trying to force something that's not there into because I just believe it's there, whatever, all those different type of avenues like that. But tickers I was looking at coming into the morning are MRIN, which I'll get into a little bit. Of course, the high percentage mover. LPTX, of course, which I traded. EDSA for a third day surge type of play, which kind of happened a little bit. Pairing that with ZIVO as well, too, from Monday. Those big percentage movers. APRN, of course, which I traded. And then ILUS, that OGC ticker, which is now coming off the watch list. I'll get into that one as well, too. This was another day, too. Same thing on SPY that I've seen these, whatever weekish after hours from the previous trading day. Pre-market looks nice with a little bit of strength. Thought came into my head, hey, let's potentially play this to the downside through options on SPY. I think this could kind of rinse and repeat maybe yesterday or the after hours, or yesterday that was the bounce attempt and it really just didn't happen. And this thing could eventually touch that 430 low, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, that break was going to happen today. But today would have been another day that would have gotten screwed out on that. I think I'm doing very well in just controlling what I'm focusing on right now in the small caps and maybe tapping my toes a little bit in the OTC sector. But gosh, yeah, I'll continue to try and think that I'm playing paper trading these SPY options, which I'm not. I'm just mentally paper trading them in my head. But yeah, another X on the board for me today, too, of thinking, hey, I could think this could be another down day, potentially trying to play the full day trend when the full day trend today was 1% to the upside. So wrong on that one in that account. But in other terms, great on the small cappers. LPTX I'll start off with. Not a crazy low floater to start off with. This is that failed offering dump style play. They came out with that offering yesterday right after the close of $90 million. I didn't even see the price. $284.9 per share, $285 per share. So just immediately dumped it right after, but just didn't continue to die off. And even in that after hours there, it bounced back to VWAP and was still green from the open. So definitely 100% still kept it on the radar. I kind of balanced it out with the non-floatiness. It's I think it's 32 million float. Yeah, 32 million float. So it's not like a crazy high float, but not insanely low float either to try and push this thing, which I really look for on a failed offering dump off after the offering comes out. But pairing it alongside too, I think it balanced out that it was still around this breakout point, still had this 3-5-ish area to break. On the longer term time frame to 2019 shows a little bit more resistance as well too. that it bounced to perfectly off of like this 3.5 level that came a little bit of resistance in that $half area, of course, is a psychological key factor too. So just kept that in the back of my mind. Volume was developing well in pre-markets, showing some strength, holding, showing a little bit more strength, pulled back, but bounced off VWAP. And then just kind of, I lucked out a little bit that I was watching the level 2 perfectly at this time, that we get a nice little push here back to 3.2. And then the bid all of a sudden just stacks at 3.22, 3.2 something. And I was able to get filled 50 shares. Yeah, 50 shares at 3.22 on that first entry on this strength that pushed immediately to the upside and had a little bit of rejection here, but didn't continue on. Of course, my risk level would have been around this like 3.15, maybe 3.12-ish. That's why I started in a little bit smaller. In my head, I was kind of imagining too, hey, I think I could see myself sizing up into $200 or 200 share position size on this one on the low side almost, when in reality, I ended up only going with a 100 share position in total. So that's a huge X in my book of, like I mentioned in the intro, of with the high conviction trades that this actually turned out to be, the level it was holding at 3.3, man, it probably would have been wiser. Of course, it is in hindsight, but even in that sense too, of how well it was holding. And as this pre-market started to play out too, it was just so obvious, blatant on the level 2 time and sales that something was supporting this bid, this price action the whole entire way too. It was just absolutely ready to squeeze shorts. And the level I was so keyed in on was this previous high of day, this 3.4, because then at that point too, it was every single short is red. It's not even just some of these shorts from yesterday. It's any and every short is underwater as soon as we're able to start to tap that previous high of day point at 3.45. So that was a huge confirmation there. And I was literally saying, what the poop nuggets, as this thing just totally smacked down, because as price was continuing to develop, I thought it was going to be a little bit more volatile within the first few minutes of the morning. It was pretty decent dollar volume today too. My stupid scan software is not up to date today for some reason. So I don't know what we actually did today too, but it was, in watching the price action on this one, it was building so nicely. And as we're getting to like 3.45, 3.46, then the bids started to stack again too. And that's exactly what I looked for. That's on the second entry as well. It was the same exact thing, that I'm looking for more strength. I know I want to take more size in my position, but I got to see more strengths. The same thing of, hey, I got to see that bid stacked at some point too. And it was funny that I was saying that in my head, and 2 seconds later, it precisely happened at like 3.25 or 3.27 something. I think it literally just started to stack. And I was like, oh yeah, that's the sign. Got in, and it was a nice move to the upside and held that pretty well all the way into the pre-market. So played out pretty textbook to what I was trying to see it, other than trying to throw different variables at it and keep myself open to all different types of perspectives and price actions if it wanted to take those different routes today too. But now back to, this morning, this initial 2nd-minute spike, I was so confused at how the heck did this thing just slip off of creating new highs when the bid was immediately there to support it. And just, I think it was a little bit of a ploy to say anybody that was trying to get in on this consolidation here, that they were looking to play off of those stops, trying to hit what was an obvious risk level of 3.28 here. If any longs were trying to play this at that point too, or I think any longs here trying to get those more stops, more cash, but it kind of held there. At that point too, I wasn't faked out. I knew, hey, give it a little bit more room. It was, I think, just below my entry point at that point, put me a little bit in the red. But I've been far more red and still holding a stock in my past trading career that's turned out to be winners too. So still held on to it. Had a nice little consolidation here, and then we got this nice volume push to the upside. Sold into this little bit of strength here with this nice volume candle at that point at 10%, which was 3.5 I wanted to sell right there too, because I didn't know that was going to be a point of inflection. So I had a limit order, then got ran into, which was good to see strength there. And then it started to pull back, which I thought, oh, okay, shoot, maybe that was all the juice in it today. But also pairing myself into with the mentality of, I think I learned that from Brian Shannon, of on breakout trades themselves, it's so hard to establish a new profit target because you're in a new trend. There really is no technical level to base any profit target or goal on, because it's just foreign territory almost, right? It's totally brand new. All the shorts are squozing. Longs are just along for the ride. They're looking for the most amount of money they can. So it's not like really there's any bias either way, as a new breakout trend is coming specifically for that new fresh territory. So as we're pulling back there, and I'm thinking, gosh, but I think, it's tempting to try to cut the rest of my shares. It was looking weak, but I'm going, I think there's just more strength in it. This cannot be the end of the trend. I think there's plenty more room in it. Wasn't trying to land a moonshot on this one. I was thinking, or not trying to even predict like, I think it could go to $4, staying within the realm of possibility. I thought if it maybe drew out a little bit more consolidation around this time frame, that potentially could have a slower grind to the upside. Excuse me. And then maybe have a little bit more room than a 3-7 push. But as soon as I saw this immediate strength here and push hard at 3-7, I was like, okay, shoot. Yeah, I cannot turn that down in a sense. It had a few more cents in it, 3-6-7-5, which was good to see. At least that is, I kind of do want to be in that perspective too, that I start to cut some of my winners too soon. I think that's a very good problem to have compared to how I've not done that a lot in the past as well in my recent trading. But it pretty much was the top on that one. The 3-7 had a few more cents, but that was the end. And I was surprised as well too of how hard this thing just absolutely pulled back. It's not like I care whatsoever, but that's the reason why I kind of just look for that quick scalp or the quick move. When the trade is there, I will take it. And I'm not trying to force anything more out of it than there is, because this is the exact result that can happen. It just absolutely dies off and fades. When in reality, I potentially thought, maybe it could for a few more days. I certainly wasn't going to try to play it or waste my mental energy focusing on it more throughout the day, but I was surprised to see that, yes, it did pull back so hard, all the way down almost to $3 whole level. Perked a little bit back to VWAP into the close, but I certainly have no plans to trade it in the next few days here, but that was the move, exact move I was looking for on this failed offering dump. I've done that a few times now on these types of trades on usually lower floaters, but I think the combination, like I mentioned earlier, of the fact that this was still right around that breakout point of that 3.5 level, that $half psychological level, with this nice parabolic move on the daily too, was a nice combination to balance that type of trade out. Great move on that one. And again, just over a 10% mover on that one, and shoulda, coulda, woulda been taking more size on it. That's what I got to start hammering. When the conviction is there, when the trade is there, when the trade thesis is in effect. When I've mentioned this one yesterday after the close that I was looking for this exact type of move. Man, I got to be ready to absolutely hammer those. And man, I got to stop coughing for some reason. MRIN I'll mention now too. Of course, this was the big old percentage mover from yesterday, and then just holding really well into this pre-market today. Had this little spike attempt here that I wrote down in my journal too, that okay, you can identify some amount of technical levels from this. You call this 9.5 area, 9.7-ish. This little 9.5 to 9.7-ish range as potentially a little measure for any amount of inflection or basing if it wanted to try and dip and rip potentially today too. But I knew going from even before that 9:45 time frame, as I was still looking at other tickers as well too, I did not feel confident in this thing holding up for a dip and rip. It is a low floater. It's the former runner, 9.8 million floater. But I just, for some reason, I feel like I've been through a few of these where they just have this, not as hard of a sell-off as it did from the open today, but man, where they just continued that fade and they kind of do that little fake out and pretend like, oh, we're basing here. This could be the climb back to VWAP, but it certainly was not today too. I'm very glad I stayed out of that one and had the awareness too and that little bit of intuition to say I do not believe this one has a strength to, just because for how long it's been holding this range. It had a little bit of a perk and it broke that range for a little bit, but two, it's still in that range for me in a sense. It's not defining any new trends or establishing anything new. It's still just saying, hey, to me, that's still just flat in a sense. So just absolutely pulled on. A lot of people, a lot of red names in the millionaire chat hammered it decently well to the short side. I think they were kind of pissed at themselves too a little bit, kicking themselves a little bit that they should have gone in more or harder. I don't think they expected it to go as far as it did, certainly as well, but potentially I think a lot of longs were trying to predict that dip and rip as well too, and it just kept dipping and dipping and dipping and dipping without them and no rip. So that was a very interesting one on that. Potentially I would be interesting to see what it wants to do in the next few days here, because it is that former runner. It still has that capacity to do that and could do something ludicrous, whether that's internally that they put out some news or put out some, mess with the internals or fundamentals in some type of way, or it just becomes another manipulated type of stock through external sources as well too. Interesting to watch. Also looked at it potentially kept an eye on for the 11 a.m. dip buy, that Mark Crook terminology or type of trade too that you see the shorts in the morning that just absolutely want to hammer this thing, that they look for that 8, which is 8 o'clock my time frame here. It's not a hard specific time frame comparable to what the 945 dip buy is, but it's just that little 11 o'clock area where the morning shorts are kind of done. They start to cover, and then price starts to reclaim back closer to VWAP, potentially get a little bit of an afternoon push. And I think the trade is over pretty much at that point too. Maybe you ride a little bit more into the close, but just kept an eye on it for that type of trade. But I think that was discouraged from this ticker today too, because it wasn't like shorts were the dominant factor today too. I think it was just longs, some amount of overhead were beating the longs. It's not like shorts were winning. It's just that longs were just continuing to bleed out and die in a sense. And I say that too because of how many of the red names did not expect this thing to bleed as far as it did, and how far down it actually did reach in the day too. So that's maybe another reason why for that 11 a.m. dip buy didn't actually come to fruition, or you didn't get any harder trend continuation, maybe back to that $10 whole level area. That was MIRN, APRN, my second trade on the day. Again, super, super small position size. I wanted this was 10 share trade. This was a $56 position size. Kidded around with myself saying, hey, maybe you should take 20 shares at least, get a $100 position size as a minimum. But I knew too, coming into this trade, I wanted to look at it as a slower or longer intraday type of mindset, or a swinging type of mindset. Don't really know if I was going to hold it overnight. I knew it didn't have a lot of play or activity in the after hours, so I didn't have to necessarily be scared out by that too. But anytime you overnight, it's going to be dangerous, depending on what the company could do, anything that could go on internally, externally. But the daily chart on this one was just so awesome. And I think this was this is Blue Apron. This is, did Wall Street Bets have a little bit of influence on this one on that 15th when they raised money? I think that was the reason for this, or the reason for the larger perk, this bigger volume day on that 15th when they put out some good news too. But we're getting this nice breakout opportunity. It's in this little bit of a downtrend on a longer term daily perspective. But coming into this little cupish pattern here, you get the nice kind of fake out breakout day here to break this little previous regional high. And then 2E pattern describes it well too. That's the second day is eventually when it becomes that nice actual perk breakout to the upside. So had it on the radar coming in, like I mentioned, on the watch list coming into today. Thought it was going to be done. Thought it was breaking down right away from the morning session, but it actually reclaimed. And 5.6, 5.7 kind of became a key area for me too. This was not the bestest entry for me. I saw some green strength coming in and kind of got screwed over on a top ticket like 5.65. Of course, on my 10 shares. But then it just pulled back a little bit. But I knew too I was going to have to sit and be a little bit more patient, maybe trade it on the 5-minute more as I was watching it. And I didn't keep a hard eye on it for the whole day. I set a limit really around, I set a range order like 6.5 for the profit target and like 5.3, I think, this low a day as a stop out. And especially it made me more comfortable because it was such a small position size as well too, to give it that much room to play. And was very glad to see that even though it did have these little kind of fake outs, it was still putting in higher lows and still trending well. This nice little curl here coming out of the lunch session. Then you get the final push to 5.9, then $6 comes easy. And I kind of randomly looked at it, pulled up the chart once again as we was getting to this point, and then it was just looking very weak, slapping the bid here. So, potentially if I was seeing it around the 6.10 and then it was starting to fail, I would maybe have been more inclined to take off at that point there. But this was a great little 7% mover on that one that certainly had the liquidity too. Not insane liquidity, but decent enough amount of dollar size to get a good trade in on that one. Great experience nonetheless too. But again, same thing with LPTX and APRN. The conviction in the trade and has got to correlate with the position size in it as well too, and I can't shy away from that in any regards whatsoever. That was all the trades I had on the day. The 2 trades on APRN and LPTX. I just want to go over EDSA and ZIVO as well too. EDSA looking for that kind of third day surge attempt, even though that first day wasn't really the most awesome day because it did die off a little bit in the morning, as I mentioned on that Monday. But it did have that reclaim and then just kind of faded, or a little bit more of a sell-off, not so much of a consolidation type of rest day on the second day. But just holding it on the watch list to see, hey, if it does get a little bit of volume, could go a little bit more parabolic. I don't want to be ready for it. Just did absolutely nothing. Died off a little bit more, chopped around. Had this little perk, which was a nice little 10% block too, but I certainly wasn't watching it. And hard call for me to say that too, even as it's trending here at that point. ZIVO really did nothing as well. Similar type of third day play, even though it did have the hard sell off on that initial run up from Monday. Just nothing to continue to push that up. Watch this going into tomorrow. Keeping an eye on TGGI. Also not a big dollar volume mover. I wish I had my freaking scans dollar volume. I think it's what it's trading to, just the volume today. 387 million is not a lot of dollar volume on this one. Is that just barely under 2 million or something? Whatever that math. Let me do the math quick. So it is pretty decent, actually. A little bit under, just right at like $7 million volume on the day too, which is good to see. Could have a nice little panic here. It did have a little bit of a sell-off at the close, so that could show some nice opportunity for some panicking longs going into right away from the market open tomorrow. So it could offer a pretty nice panic dip buy opportunity. Again, not most insane dollar volume or volume to shove this thing super hard to the downside. That would offer a reasonable dip buy reversal, but absolutely we got to keep our eye on it. If it's up this far and parabolic 100%. ILUS is just absolutely 100% coming off my chart for just how stair-step-ish and stupid this thing is. It did have that fake out dip buy. I didn't watch this whatsoever during market hours because it just became blah in the morning session, but in this little midday panic, kind of proven correct here in this, you get this huge volume candle push that was right after what should be or could be looked at as the panic, but it was the fake out. There was no continuation after that green candle, just died off, broke that bottom low, and continued on a little bit more, and just a choppy little mess of a dip buy. Did offer 28.29, close to 20% block here of upside off of that dip, but really just not to my flavor. And this daily too, it looks okay and decent, but I just don't want to be a part of it. It's absolutely coming off with how this intraday price action works. It's a shame to see, in my opinion, on that. CRVS, I'm looking at pretty hard. You scratch everything I said in the intro. I look at something hard in the morning too, but this red day today too, of course, it looks like the first red day on the daily, but where's the volume? Where's the panic of what should be considered a first red day for the volume it did have, and for the lack of volume it did have, especially on this third day, to continue to push this insane price action? Where's the volume and the panic of all the longs, all the shorts coming into this type of thing to push this type of price action? I know a lot of the red names in the chat too were playing it to the downside and did pretty well on what should be a first red day, but then now it's kind of holding around the 7.5. I think it could be a good little basing area of range here as a potential long entry, depending on what it wants to do in the after hours going into pre-market as well. But I am 100% keeping my eye on this low floater. Now short sale restricted as well too. Should be short sale restricted tomorrow. 8.4 we tapped. 7, is that 10%? Yeah, absolutely. So we should be short sale restricted tomorrow as well too, which could push this thing even freaking higher. It could have a lot of room to the upside if it wants to start squeezing again too, especially if any sticky fingered shorts are still stuck in this thing, holding on to that first red day type of trade. Will certainly 100% keep my eyes on this one going into tomorrow. That is all I had. Great trading around the horn. Again, good problem to have too, that now we just got to work on position sizing on the hard trades that I feel great conviction in. Now that I'm stepping away more from the chasey style of trades to the stupid pre-market little tiny in and out stuff that I was doing, I think we could see some awesome opportunities going into the rest of the week here. So that is it. I thank you guys for watching. We will catch you guys next time.